सलामती इमाम ज़माना बुलंदतर सलावत अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद।
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd like to thank you all for coming to today's program, and I'd like to welcome you all to coming to today's program, which we commemorate these sad days of Muharram and Safar, remembering the great sacrifice of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his family and companions. The sacrifice they made by giving their lives and everything with the sole aim and intention of saving the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to sustain the Muslim community. Today is the 2nd of Safar in the year 1434 AH. We remember Imam Sajjad, the 4th Imam of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, also known as Imam Zain al-Abideen. Imam Zain al-Abideen was born on Saturday the 15th of Jamad al-Awwal in Medina. His father was Imam Hussein, son of Imam Ali, may peace be upon them all. His mother was Shahrbanu, daughter of King Yazdargad, the 2nd king of Persia. Imam Zain al-Abideen died at the age of 58 in Medina on the 21st of Muharram in the year 95 AH. He was poisoned by Walid bin Abdul Malik Marwan. The Imam is buried in Jannatul Baqi in Medina. He was the only male survivor in the tragedy of Karbala, in which all the male children of Imam Hussein, Imam Hassan, Imam Ali were all killed. Imam Zain al-Abideen was so ill that he was unable to participate in the battle with his father, but in the results of that he survived the massacre. He became the 4th Imam on the 10th of Muharram in 61 Hijri. His life and the line of descendants of Imam Hussein alayhi salam survived because Allah intended that the Imamate had to go on. After Yazid was released all the prisoners of Karbala, Imam Sajjad returned to Medina with the ladies of the Ahlul Bayt, Lady Zainab, Lady Kulthum, and Lady Rubab. May peace be upon them all.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Imam Zain al-Abideen spent the rest of his life praying and writing supplications, which was so powerful and so moving that his companions started collecting these supplications until today. These supplications still exist by the name of Sahifa Sajjadiyah. You'll find that our Imam Zain al-Abideen was in Karbala, but he was very sick. He was in his early 20s, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ensured that he would not go into the front lines of the battlefield in Karbala because the Imam must need to continue, but he was present. There's a story about Imam Zain al-Abideen, that when he was very ill, he was very, very ill, that he could hardly stand up, but when he was well aware of what was going on outside. He sees his father Imam Hussein alayhi salam getting ready to go to the battlefield, and he hears, "Hal min nasi yansuruna?" Is there anyone to help me? Imam is speaking to the public, to those on the other side. Hal min nasi yansuruna? Is there anyone? Will you help me? Why? Because when the Imam wants to save them, when he says, "I need your help," it isn't because he needs their help because he is needy. No. Yansuruna is for you and I. It means that when we help him, we help ourselves. Just like in the instance for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we pray for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need our prayer. We pray for him to help ourselves. And Imam Zain al-Abideen crawls out of his bed. He crawls out of his bed, he pulls his sword out, and he pulls himself up, and he says, "Baba, I am ready to help you." I can just see the picture of a father looking at his son. This is the next Imam. Imam Hussein looks at him, and how can Imam Zain al-Abideen bear this scene? Allahu Akbar. When we think of the personality of Imam Zain al-Abideen, the personality of the Imam, he had to have patience to see his whole family being killed, and then for 34 years after, to be patient and watch in silence. Allahu Akbar. Imam was continuously in sujood and ruku, praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And by the way, the title Imam Zain al-Abideen was given to him by his enemies, not by his friends, meaning he is the beauty of one who does ibadat. Imam Zain al-Abideen used to pray 1,000 rakahs a night, and he used to say, "I am ashamed of what you call me, for my grandfather Ali ibn Abu Talib was much greater than I was, much better in dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than I was." And that Imam Zain al-Abideen was such a humble man, such a humble personality that just looking at him is enough for you and I to emulate in our day-to-day lives. And not to be proud and arrogant and not to think of ourselves as great people. And his whole family was butchered. And when Imam Zain al-Abideen was to walk, people would know his presence. That when he entered the Holy Kaaba after the tragedy of Karbala, after he'd been released from prison, as he's entering, Hisham bin Abu Malik, who was the Khalifa of the time, was trying to reach the black stone Hajar al-Aswad. He was pushing and no one was letting him through, and suddenly everyone stops. They all move away and there's a silence, there's an aura and there's a presence. There's a person who had just walked in, subhanAllah. You know, when someone tells me, Imam Sahib al-Zaman is in our presence, when someone tells me Imam Sahib al-Zaman is in our presence, it gives me the chills. Because is this someone ordinary? No. These people are beyond ordinary. And are these people to be worshipped? Of course not. These are great persons who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen. And when the Imam walks into the Kaaba, Hisham bin Abu Malik becomes very jealous and he says, "What is this? Who is he?" And they all file away and Imam silently walks forward and he comes to Hajar al-Aswad. He is so jealous, Hisham. He says, "Who is he?" And Farazdak steps out, the famous poet says, "Araftu, Araftu." You know him and you know who he is. You'll find that people were crying when they heard what the man said about the Imam Zain al-Abideen. He's saying such brutal things. Who is this Imam Zain al-Abideen? He's been dragged in chains after the tragedy of Karbala, and the Imam was standing on the day of Ashura, on the morning after all the bodies had been carried away. Whose bodies? The bodies of the enemies. The bodies of the Ahlul Bayt and their family were left on the bare sand. And Imam was dragged in chains. They say the chain was so hot and heavy that when you wear something metallic and you go to that part of the world, the metallic chains will burn you. And the Imam had to wear these chains on his wrists and his arms and his neck for more than a year. And the Imam crossed the desert barefoot. You know, it is almost impossible for you and I to walk barefoot in the sand. But as the sabr of a man, he said, the Imam narrates that when we are under difficulty, we will be under sabr and we will be patient. And we will keep saying, "Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un." The Imam looks at Hasib bin Numair, and Hasib bin Numair is drinking some water. And the Imam says to him, he says, "Do you have some compassion? I am thirsty, would you give me some water?" And Hasib bin Numair looks at him and he says, "Would you like some water?" The Imam says, "Yes. Have some compassion. You have already done all this butchery. We are all that is left." He looks at our Imam with an attitude, and he takes some water and he spills it in front of the Imam and says, "Here. You won't get any water." And our Imam looks at him patiently and he smiles and he says, "No problem. We will not condemn you and we will not condemn Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." You see, the tides have turned. You'll see the tides have turned. The whole Umayyad empire has flipped upside down and it's turned over. The Imam is released from prison a couple of years later. He's in Medina. You see, the whole Umayyad empire is completely destroyed and turned over. And Hasib bin Numair is running in the nights of the desert of Medina. And our living Imam of the time, in the darkness of the night, he has on his back sacks of wheat and rice to feed the hunger and the poor in Medina. Allahu Akbar. The man whose family has been butchered in Karbala after he's been released. You know, if you think that if your whole family had been butchered, you would have anger upon people. Obviously, but this is the Imam. He is concerned about people because it's an Imam busy at night. They say that Imam Muhammad al-Baqir said that when I was giving ghusl to my father after the shahadat, he had a mark on his back because of all the carrying of the sacks and wheat at night, and the grains and rice to go feed the poor and the hungry people. This is how our Imam was, brothers and sisters. So our Imam at the time of Medina, he was carrying this wheat on his back at the darkness of the night, and as he is walking through the night, he comes across this man. The same man who spilled the water in front of him. The man meets the Imam and says, "I am thirsty, I am hungry, can you give me some food?" The Imam looks at him. Now look at how history has turned. The tides have changed. Now he is a beggar and the Imam has the upper hand. Look what Islam teaches us about akhlaq and good mannerisms and good behavior. That the very man who butchered his family, you know, if someone butchers your family, can you forgive them? No. You will have an anger and a personal vendetta against them, of course you would. But look at Imam, how his behavior is. The man is saying, I am hungry, and the Imam says, no problem. He gives him a bowl of rice and he gives him food, and as he's giving him food, he looks at his wrist, the man looks at the wrist of the Imam, and notices he has a scar on his hand. And he remembers that scar, and he looks closer at our Imam, and our Imam looks at him with a smile and says, yes, that is me, the very one you refused to give me, but today I am giving you. And they say he started to cry, the enemy started to cry. Why should he not cry? For even that of an animal would cry. After seeing such compassion that our Imam returns good favors upon him. After he did all that, and this is the story of our blessed Imam, that even he had to die of the shahadat of drinking poison and being removed from this world. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Salawat Allah Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.